there are probably three overarching issues, and rather than, if you...
Why don't you go ahead and share
Yeah, go ahead.
that needs.
Oh, well, I was going to talk to you offline, but I got that way we can hear it.
That way everybody can hear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of it is, this is supposed, well, first of all, let me say that my comments are not meant in any way, shape, or form as a condemnation. It's just a way, I feel, of putting things in proper perspective.
Okay.
How the village looks.
No, see. This document is supposed to be the village's document. And when I read through it, the way it was presented, it felt to me like an audit telling us what we should be doing, rather than saying the village will do this, or the village plans on doing this, rather than the village should do this. And the word should is throughout the entire document, and it gives an entirely different feel for what the document is. Now, I realize you as a third party did this document, so I understand where you're coming from. But it is the village's document, so we should be saying what we as a village will do or plan to do, rather than somebody telling us what we should do.
Okay.
It doesn't read right to me in the plan.
All right, so I just want to address it. So you said what we should consider. So usually the language when we write plans is usually should or should consider. If you say will do, that's sort of a commitment to actually doing it. You don't know.
Or plan to do it.
Or consider.
Yeah. So
Or consider.
But when we were out, your point is well taken. So yeah, we can take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it may seem like a small point, but
No.
it reads totally
If
different.
it doesn't have the tenor you think it should, we can change that.
So that was one comment. The other comment is there are a number of pictures throughout the entire document. Some of them are appropriate, but some of them don't appear to have any relation to what you're talking about on that particular page. Or if they do, they're not representative of the village. They're like boilerplate that came from someplace else, rather than showing what's the village looks like.
Now, I know you haven't looked at it, but there's, for example, there's a set of townhomes that aren't ours. There's bike paths,
Yeah.
walls.
Right, and it's funny because some communities want us to use examples of what new development or things could be like if they're improved differently going forward. Other communities say we want you to use photos from our community of what it is you're talking about. So there's a preference. So sometimes my staff use different things. I also noticed there's a photograph in there of the high school you go to, but it's not in Hainesville. So I didn't know if that was you wanted that or not. Since it,
That's,
okay, all right. So
but
Grace Lake
there's
High
two
School.
high schools we go to.
I know, but the Grace Lake High School stadium is the one that's in the plan.
If it's appropriate to put something in there as an example, then there should be some explanation on that photo as to what it's all about.
So you want the photos captioned?
Maybe that.
Okay, all right.
If it's not,
Okay.
if it's not something that we have in the village already.
If it's not in the village already, all right, that's fair, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, and the third thing was, and maybe I overlooked this, but I didn't notice anything that talked about what the character of the village should be, or what the village should look like. I know we had some examples of that in the previous plan, that, and I'm not saying that those should be what we come up with. All I'm saying is that there should be some indication of what we want the village to represent, what we want the village to look like, what we want the character to be.
Right, and so we can put more in there about that. Going back to the previous plan, actually had like sample site plans in there of development that never materialized. It was pretty specific as far as comprehensive plans go, because they talked about like the materials to be used, pitched roofs, things like that. But most of the development that's been done since that plan is in place, whether it was Walgreens, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, 7-Eleven, nothing followed the comprehensive plan. So in doing those plan reviews for those developments, most of the tenor of the board when those developments were approved, not consistent with the plan, was that they wanted to maintain generally the rural, small town character. They understand developers are coming with their sort of idea for their development, So we stripped some of that prescriptive design guideline stuff out of this one.
You don't have to be, it doesn't, because of what you just said, it doesn't have to be that specific, but there should be some overarching idea
Characteristics.
of what,
Okay.
what we want to do.
Okay, all
I mean,
right.
isn't that what we want the comprehensive plan to do? Because people who are going to come in here and relocate, either as a resident or as a business, should have an idea of what we expect them to do.
So if we put, I'm just curious, so if we put photos in there, different photos in there to capture the character, you think that's essentially captured by photos of existing stuff, or do you want us to capture maybe development that doesn't exist here that also reflects the desired character?
Well, I think,
development.
again, maybe that's too specific. What I'm thinking of is some idea that we approach that, some goal that we're moving toward.
Okay,
Whether we get into the nitty details is another question.
okay,
Because maybe that constrains things. But if you have an overarching idea of where you want to go, at least you're on the right path.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you don't know what your goal is, you're not going to get there.
yeah, we can phrase it a different way. That in the plan, I know we have a vision statement that captures the character of the commercial areas, the residential areas, and the rural sort of small town character of the community as a whole. Those characteristics, adjectives, and descriptions are repeated in several different places. But what might work better is almost as sort of a call out, if you will, or a page dedicated to the character of our community. It's
Right.
something
Right.
that you don't have to glean from reading the plan. It's a little bit more sort of like, here's like, you'll see this throughout the plan, but here it is sort of
Right.
face forward. Okay, we can do that.
John, in a conversation I had with George earlier today, I pointed out, and he'd already read this, that towards the end of the plan, you state this should be reviewed, updated, addendums added. If the board desires at some time, if you have that overarching statement, we might be able to add more specifics at some point after we discuss it.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't,
Yeah, things change over time,
Yeah.
I recognize that, but we have it to redundant, I guess, have some overarching idea of where we want to go.
And we thought we captured that narratively in the vision and the goals and in the description of each, the northern area and what that should be, the central area, what that should be. But we can go back and punch that up and maybe do some call outs that reinforce the character. That might help. Yeah, we can do that.
Wait, John, I believe that Walgreens was built before we did the comprehensive
I
plan.
think you're right.
And so what we were hoping was that new development, like Firestone, would reflect what we wanted, but it was negated, and we ended up looking like Walgreens instead of what we had hoped we would be able to change the look of the building.
but that was a board decision, because we talked, and they gave us some of the arched roofs or higher point roofs and some of the color, but that was discussed here. I'd like to blame you, but I don't think we can.
Yeah, they initially came in, for example, there were two developments that we were a part of in the last few years. One was the Dunkin' Donuts, which doesn't have a, Dunkin' Donuts is Dunkin' Donuts, they have their style. They did a nice job on that site. And the Firestone, initially they came in, to your point, they came up with all flat brick
Right.
with sort of a mezzanine, two-story element in the middle. And in working with their architects, we even did a 3D rendering based off their architect's description. We did one that showed what it would look like with a pitched roof. They were going to do sort of the central piece was going to be hardy board wood siding and sort of an olive green with a pitched roof. And so they went through a couple of different machinations. And where it came up was they did away with the mezzanine and stuff, but they ended up at least with a pitched roof in the middle.
Right.
So that was sort of the conception to them wanting to do that, but for that spread of development, doing sort of the pitched roof, cedar siding, things like that was in the plan, just you couldn't do it for that size of development. So, but we'll try to capture more of the charm and the character in that without being dictatorial or prescriptive. So we'll take another shot at it.
There's something else that's in there that, it's the Prairie View School. There is no way that the kids can get to Prairie View School other than busing. We cannot get them across the street. We cannot We've gone through this a gazillion times. The only thing would be to put a pedestrian bridge over 120, which we're not going to do. So there isn't any reason that we need to have any of that discussion in the comp plan because it's just.
It's emphasized in the plan that you probably know that we should try to build a walker and bike friendly approach to the school. And we did look into a pedestrian bridge and quickly realized that it would be ugly and awful expensive.
Cost prohibitive.
Yeah, we looked into a stoplight, the state said no. Could we make sure that there's more of a crossing, controlled crossing here at Hainesville Road and 120? Yes, and there is an existing sidewalk. But all the kids are either driven by mom and dad or can take the bus.
Right.
And that's because of the dangerous crossing. And you've been out here a couple times when,
Many, yeah.
yeah, when it's backed up from Volo to,
All the way.
yeah. And it's dangerous.
Well, I don't think the plan calls for a new light on.
No, but it talks about bikes and sidewalks to get the kids to school, and that just isn't going to happen.
Okay, all right. In any plan we do, and if we need to take it out, we can. We try to emphasize as much pedestrian bicycle mobility as possible in and around the school, even if not connected to the school. But we can go ahead and take a look at that. So I think we would have been remiss if we not put it in there to try to make the school more bicycle and pedestrian connected.
Just can't.
But if you can't, you can't.
Okay. Chris, I'll get you.
Just a quick question. Have we considered maybe doing an underground path to the school? I can tell, the reason why I say that is over at the Navy base, you have the boot camp side, and there's another boot camp side. Well, they can't march over Buckley. They literally have a path that goes under Buckley so they can get to the other part of the recruit side. So would that be an option to go underground?
Again, probably cost prohibitive. I would have to approve it. If you came up with all the money, I would probably say okay. But underpasses are usually more cost effective and are easier to do than overpasses because of the runoff and stuff that you need for ADA compliance. So underpasses are usually easier. But it's still, you could put in there that if the opportunity presents itself in the future, the village could explore opportunities to blah, blah, blah. But a recommendation to do it would be tough because it would be likely to be cost prohibitive. We'll take a look at the language to make sure we're not recommending something that can't be done. We don't want to do that.
Bumper cars.
Bumper
Bumper cars.
Bumper cars would be good, golf cars.
How about zip line?
Dave?
Oh, that's a good one.
Okay, hang on a second. Dave?
I just had a few minor issues and I was wondering, maybe I can email them to you?
Absolutely, you bet. I'll give you one of my cards afterwards. You can email it directly. You bet.
Yeah, but I did like your suggestions on implementation for having nice streetscape benches, linking sidewalks on both sides of streets, things like that. And I think, that's the kind of infrastructure we need as a village. There are big gaps, with lighting and rest areas and being able, and less curb cuts too also is an issue that I think.
Access management could be a little better in some spots, sure.
Okay. Jim?
Good evening.
Good evening, nice to see you.
Yeah, of course. I'm retired from marketing, advertising, public relations, and investor relations. And whenever we would put together a plan similar to this, it was a strategic plan. And the first step in order to get to the stage that you were at, we would conduct what's called a SWOT analysis, in which you identify the strength, the weakness,
Opportunities.
and threats.
Right.
And I noticed that this presentation was very positive all the way through. And I've been doing it so long that it's like you've got to think ahead a little bit, like what's going to happen with all this other stuff. How's that going to affect the kids walking to school and that type of thing. So I think the statistics in doing a plan like this one, going on 20 years, has to have a lot of weight on it in the first 48 to 60 months, so you can really review the heck out of it and make sure that you're SWOT analysis. You know, what's good and what's maybe bad for what we're doing. So, I'm not demanding anything, I'm just saying that this is a little way of having done things not so long ago.
Yeah, and it's funny, so for those of you that don't know, SWOT analysis is a way of doing initial or upfront analysis to figure out what the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats are. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what we do. We call it existing conditions, issues, and opportunities assessment. We did that at the very beginning of the study. And we had a presentation, and that's where we said, this is what's good, this is sort of the good, the bad, the ugly, right? This is pretty good, this is a strength, this is a weakness, you gotta work on that. So that was the very first thing that we did. And then from that analysis, coupled with what residents told us they liked or didn't like, resulted in sort of how we began to frame the document. So we do our version of a SWOT analysis at the very beginning, sort of the first 1/3 of the process. And we call it an existing conditions, issues, and opportunities analysis. And so you're exactly right. If you don't know what's working and what's not, you don't have anything to build on or correct. So you're exactly right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
So I need to just understand the basics, so bear with me. So from what I understand, it sounds like the village board approached John and his company and said, hey, we need help with the plan. His job was to come back to us after doing much thorough investigation, decisions, et cetera, to come back to us and say, this is what I think you should do. And now it's up to the board to agree and disagree, and then come up with funding to implement.
Close. John, do you want to explain?
Yeah, so that's not a bad summary. So first of all, just a little bit for some of you who might not know, this is a comprehensive plan for cities. Comprehensive plans are done by cities and counties and even regions. But there are these things called enabling acts at the federal level that allow states to require comprehensive plans of cities. Okay, so every state has enabling legislation, and every state's a little bit different. Illinois has its own. Sort of gives guidelines as to what should be in a comprehensive plan. In a nutshell, it is a long-range planning document, primarily around land use and development, and should articulate how a community aspires to grow over the next 10 to 20 years. What land use should go where, what development would look like, how do they plan on growing, conserving, developing. And then they fold in other things like facilities, transportation. It's not meant to be a strategic plan or short term. It's meant to be written in a 10 to 20 year horizon, but they're typically updated about every 10 to 12 years. But they're written for like a 20-year horizon. Every city has them. It's not regulatory. It's not zoning. It does not dictate what you can and cannot do. It's a plan. It's aspirational. It's policy. But if a developer were to come to the village and say, we'd like to develop X, Y, and Z on this piece of property, they should be pulling out the plan saying, we have that declared as where we want residential. We're not going to allow that industrial processing plant to go there. It's planned for residential. So it helps inform decision makers. The process was, as it was initiated, we do a lot of investigation. Planning is three things. I apologize if you've heard me say this before. I know you have. It's you have to understand where we are now. You have to determine where it is you want to go, and then you have to decide what you have to do to get there. That's the three parts of any planning process. The first piece is where we are now. It's the SWOT analysis or the existing condition analysis. We did workshops, we did online surveys, we talked to people, we got a list of what they liked, what they didn't like, what they prioritized. We looked at demographics, market, housing, existing conditions, land use, zoning, and we sort of said, here's what's working, here's what's not, here's what you might want to consider going forward. I still think one of the best things was a gentleman who was sitting in that chair right there. He sort of said at the end, he said, it's Hainesville, don't overthink it. And I thought that was pretty good. He was probably very right. And then we take all of that, get feedback on it, and we had a presentation at the village and said, here's all the issues as we see it, here's what we think we need to hit on when we prepare the plan. Had a conversation, had a meeting, got feedback. The next step is to draft the plan, present it, get feedback, which is why it's called a working draft. We comment and make corrections. Even though we're not presenting it, we've already got a lot of feedback and I'll be getting more. We'll revise it until we get it right. Then the village board adopts it. All right? And then it will live on the village's website. And then a developer, a business owner, or whatever, it would be the first place to go to sort of see what the village has planned in different areas. So that's what it is. Yep.
Answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question.
Doug?
Yes, thank you. Hi, John.
Hey,
Very few questions, but just one to start off with. Medium home values. It stated that the medium home value was 174,600, and that was a 19% decrease. Now, we're on the western end, and our homes have really skyrocketed prices where they're selling in 2, 3, 4 days. So is that going to be adjusted, or that encompasses that?
it encompasses that. We use a couple of different sources for that type of data. There's CoStar, Esri Business Analyst, and there's the U.S. Census data. So some markets are large enough and robust enough to have sort of sub-market market analysis information that's updated more recently. Those are the three sources we tend to use. We've worked in some communities where we just don't think this is correct. Sometimes it's proven not to be correct. It's the best go-to market data analytics that everybody uses, whether you're a Trader Joe's, a planning consultant, or the city of Chicago. This is the data everybody uses. So it should capture everything. We can take a look and see if it's been adjusted since 6 months ago when we did that. I doubt if it has been, but we can take a look.
Yeah, because these were for single-family homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Infills for neighborhood and housing, strengthen with new infill developments. This is more of a, if you could elaborate on an infill.
Yeah, so infill development is not, it's just that when you have a lot or property that becomes available within a developed area, you're infilling that lot. And what we're saying is seize those opportunities if they become available to develop those infill properties like the surrounding properties, right? So the challenge with Hainesville is, in its simplicity, is it's really, that's why we organize the plan, so we usually don't do this. You've got the northern piece, the central piece, and the southern piece, because it literally is snapping a chalk line to one type of area versus the other. And your residential area, you don't have acres and acres of undeveloped area. You don't. So it was sort of hard to write something where your only development opportunity for residential in the existing residential neighborhoods is if an infill property becomes available. And there are some properties down along Belvedere that have some smaller homes on larger properties that could go commercial. If they're assembled or redeveloped, they could go townhomes or something else, or variety. They could be, there's residential options there as well, but there's very few appropriate residential options besides what we call infill development.
The other part kind of goes with that. I do appreciate the fact that you were talking about housing for different stages of life, because we kind of talked about that. The other one, and this is my last one, habitat and ecosystems. I appreciate that you really articulated the positives of, I'll read it actually. That helps with habitat and ecosystems, helps with stormwater management, flood control, biodiversity, and sense of place. Important to have conservation design principles to ensure environmental assets are protected. And it kind of goes back to Jim's on the threats, because with climate change and so forth, and I think you really articulated that very well, all the benefits.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And usually the notion of conservation design is if you have a large area, sometimes it's a big flat, a flat farm field, that's easy. But you might have an area that has a creek running through it, an area of wetlands, a mature stand of trees, a swale, some topography. And rather than just come in and scrape it like they used to do and put it in a new development, conservation design mandates to identify first those environmental and ecological assets on the site, mature stand of trees, a creek, a wetland, a slope, and then sort of cordon those off to protect and say, okay, with the remaining areas, how can I best develop to maintain those environmental assets, right? And sometimes it requires them coming to the village and saying, hey, technically I can build in this area, I don't think I should. So instead of having larger lots and wipe these trees out, maybe I can have the same number of lots, but have them smaller over here that may preserve all those trees, right? So conservation design is sort of like a barter to keep and protect environmental features as much as possible as a site is developed. And it requires that those things be considered upon development approval. Yeah. So you have limited opportunities for that, but where you do, you got to think about it.
But thank you for being thoughtful.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
One clarification on your question was, we didn't go to John and hire them specifically for this. 6 years ago, we hired his company to be our community planner. This is one of the services they provide, and we've been working on this a year.
About a year or so. Before that, we did a zoning audit. Before that, we worked on a couple of developments and helped with some other places.
Okay, show you.
On the existing land use map, this light green is non-public open space, which is the Northbrook Sports Club. But you also have that in places in Hainesville, in the residential areas where we have wetlands that haven't been developed or restored yet. But they're certainly not non-public because they will be available to our residents.
Well, some of our wetlands won't, I mean.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it may not be available, but it's not non-public. It's,
But is it like a homeowners association?
no, it belongs to Hainesville.
Okay, then we'll correct those, we'll double check. Hainesville has some unique components to this open space. Northbrook Sports Club is one of them. It's a huge area, it's privately held, it's massive open space, but it's used for an activity that is legally established, legally operates, but we really don't want it expanding any further north in terms of that type of activity, but it's there, we respect that. And then you've got areas that are public parks and public open space. You've got areas that are private open space that are held by other entities other than a public agency, so they're not access to the public. It's a unique mix that most cities don't have. So we're trying to find the right labeling of those open spaces. It's a little bit unique for Hainesville. So if you have a suggestion or one that you think is mislabeled, let us know. We'll make sure to correct that. Yeah, because it was a unique challenge on which maps do we label sports, the Northbrook Sports Club? Which maps do we not label? Initially, we had it labeled on every map. But when you see those words in a gigantic field of green that's half the size of the city, it looks like it's, so we took it off except on the facilities map or on the parks and open space map. We took it off.
It's just that, these things that, there are parks that are owned by the park district.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then the wetlands are owned by the village.
Okay.
And those are,
And those are
they're
public.
in uninhabitable wetlands, undeveloped, unrestored at the moment.
But it's public open space, yes.
But it's
You're right.
public open
Okay.
Except they can't get there from here.
Yeah, they're not accessible, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're public, they're not privately held, they're
And it's-
public.
yeah, it's not-
Even if they're not accessible, they're still public.
Right.
Yeah, okay, we'll correct all, that's a good catch.
Okay. Going,
One more.
Pam.
Just a comment in the schools section. You kind of touched on it in the library section, but the village of Hainesville falls within two different school districts. You mentioned one in the plan, and I think it would be appropriate to both of them since we are pretty evenly.
Well, I thought we labeled all of the high school districts, I thought we labeled all of them, if we did, we'll correct that.
Yeah, it's, you
They're
got,
both high school.
You did mention Round Lake as well as Grizzly.
I thought we had them all in
You
there.
mentioned the two high schools and named them, but you just talked about one of the school districts. And technically, there's three school districts. There's a Round Lake
Yeah.
Consolidated District, there's an elementary school district in Grace
Grace
Lake, and
Lake.
then a high school district
Right.
in Grace Lake. So you specifically mentioned one elementary.
I thought we had them all, but I'll double check that. Yeah, for a little bitty town, we had more schools than I thought you would. Then we were going through that list.
all right.
Well, there is one comment too about the description of the fire protection, that we have the
Round Lake area.
Round Lake and then the Grays Lake, and they don't, at least the way I read it was that they covered the entire area, whereas my understanding is that Grays Lake only covers one half of the village, and Round Lake covers the other half, and the primary dividing line is Hainesville Road.
Okay.
Yet they do back each other up if needed.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But they're both
We-
the same.
We did put the district maps in there of coverage. Sometimes we'll do that if it's overly complicated. We got most of that information. We made a few phone calls, talked to some folks, and then looked on the village's website, a few other websites, to try to find out the jurisdictional, to get it correct. But it was sort of a a little bit of Sherlock Holmes gathering of that information. So if it's not spot on, let us know. We got it right, but we don't have the district maps in there to show the variation of service line or service areas. But we want to make sure that wording is right. That's another unique Hainesville asset or attribute. The last plan I did that was like that was South Barrington. South Barrington doesn't provide any of its own anything for the most part. I think they have their own police, but they don't have their public works or the other stuff like that. It's a similar sort of situation. So harder to sort of delineate out those service amenities when they're not being provided by the municipality. So we can take a look at that.
What you did was you defined what Grace Lake does, but then there was some other things you said about Round Lake, but Round Lake does the same thing as Grace Lake.
Okay.
You could just say that
These two-
names
The
of the
two of them provide these services.
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's a good point.
All right. Thank you, John.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
You'll double check your calendar for the 26th. Here are two.
Perfect.
There are probably more. How would you like it best delivered to you from the other members of the board? Do you want PDFs sent to you with their?
Yeah, markup PDFs is one thing, or if it's pretty straightforward, you can say page 7, fourth paragraph, change this to this, whatever, that's fine.
Okay.
And then just send it out to us. I'm pretty accessible as is. If I have any questions, I'll ask you for clarification.
Okay. All right.
And then what I probably do, since we know the draft is online right now, is already going to go through changes, I say leave it up there for maybe another week or so for people to take a look at it, and then take it down. We'll put up a new one a week or two before the next meeting with all the revisions in it.
Do you want the suggestions sent to your email?
Yeah, please. That'd be great. That'd be the best. Yeah.
Thank you for the
All right,
trip
thanks,
on.
you guys. Next time, we'll make sure this is fired up for you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all this. I don't know if the students all gave us the plan.
I would bet they were counting on a short meeting and they met their classroom assignment. All right, thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
We have another guest this evening, Chief Phil Pelini of the Grace Lake Hainesville Police, who's here to kind of reiterate some of the services that the police department provides for us and answer any questions that don't include particular names. All right? No? Yeah, Mike.
All the same. That's my favorite.
Unless you want me to have one, I don't think I need one.
Just go ahead and use that one. That way it gets recorded and we can turn it over to the newspapers.
All right, there you go. Something I'm really not used to. So, I suppose the biggest news I have is I'll be retiring within a year. I'll be out here next August 1st will be my last day. And so I'll feel better about things. We're going to promote from within. So it'll be the same service, different phase.
August, you're going to beat me.
What's that?
You're going to go before me.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. You never know. But I think there's a lot of things up. Just like everybody, we're stuck with this whole order things and get them delivered 2 years later life that we now have. We did finally get new police cars. Our police car with the lowest miles on it, when you extrapolate the idle hours and everything, we're about 250,000, 300,000 miles. The rest of them, there's some over about 700,000. So we're changing those over now. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my colors of the rainbow like usual. So they're all going to be black and white this time around. We're going with a whole different theme. So probably in another week or so, you're going to start seeing them around town. We've got 8 of them. We're doing 2 at a time. Probably the next month and a half or so, we'll be changed over. And then we're going to leave 2 Michigan State Police ones as high school cars. And so you'll still see a little bit of color around, but we're going mostly black and white.
What is the biggest or most frequent thing that you have to deal with in Hainesville?
Traffic. Yeah, a lot of speeding, auto complaints, things like that. You'll see that our electronic sign, waiting on batteries again. Everything used to be, unfortunately, ordered and it would say made in America, but guess what? The batteries weren't. They were made in China. So now we can't get anything from China, so everybody's trying to change over to a different supplier. And supply is, or demand is far outweighed supply, so prices are going through the roof. You know, we're waiting a year, 2 years sometimes for certain things.
Why don't you take it down until it's fixed?
Well, we have the piece for the solar part. We're gonna try to put that back up and at least get the solar part rolling. Devin's probably gonna come down here and replace the actual battery tomorrow. He was off today. So, you know, we had Grace Lake days this last weekend and everything, so we're all, everybody put in some.
The board gets a monthly report from the police department. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the most common crime in town the items stolen from unlocked vehicles?
Yes, it always will be everywhere. Yes. And all I can say is lock your cars, take your garage door openers and hide them someplace. Don't leave them sitting in the car, because if they get your garage door opener, you might not notice it right away. And you'll leave for work and they can open your garage door while you're at work and go into your house. A lot of people leave their service doors open between the garage and the house. I know for me, for years, if that door wasn't open, I'd be locked out of my own house. I've since learned to bring a key with me everywhere. And, you know, it's a pain when you used to doing things a certain way and then you can't do it anymore. But, yeah, definitely times are a-changing. And thefts are huge. They happen all the time. They go unreported all the time. What you see reported is a fraction of what really happens. So stolen cars, as you probably have seen, have gone through the roof. I think they've gone up, I don't know, over the last 4 years, they've probably gone up 200-300%. It was very uncommon to have a stolen car. We might get 2 or 3 a year. And we're probably going into the 40s a year now, 40s or 50s. In every town, it's every town. It's not just Lake County, it's not just Cook County, it's everywhere.
And you would suspect that most of those were left unlocked?
Yes. Unlocked or had the fob in them, one of the two. In fact, every one of them has either been unlocked or there's a fob in it.
Okay. To share a couple things that the police department does beyond our patrols, and we are a district of Grays Lake, or District 5.
Right, you're
So
me.
we have an officer assigned to Hainesville 24/7.
Yes.
It doesn't mean there's an officer in town 24/7, because they may be called to go to court, they may
Right.
be called to assist a different officer in a different district, but there is someone always available to cover.
Yes.
The
Yeah, detective.
the police department we have our party in the park coming up next weekend. This weekend, time flies. They are supplying one of our light towers. They will have officers there, not only just to be available to the public to see, but also to help facilitate anything that goes on.
There'll be 2 officers in me.
Okay. There was, I don't mean to surprise you, but I will, if there's any possibility that we could have someone at Tall Oak to help people cross.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how things go, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see why we couldn't, but that's just going to take away from the other. I'm sure it's not going to be a problem.
We'll just play it by ear.
Right.
Right. If I would have been smarter or better, I would have had that in writing to you a while ago.
Well, you know, it's not just about manpower, it's about, you know, we want to keep people safe. That's our biggest deal. You guys were talking earlier about kids in the school and riding bikes and walking to school. But when you look at the age of the kids that go to that school, I wouldn't want kids walking and riding to school that age. You can't time lights fast enough or slow enough. They can't account for speeds of vehicles because they just don't have that perception developed yet. And, you know, we've scooped up enough bodies over the years that we know it's a bad idea. So, yeah, you know, as they were saying, you know, a pedestrian bridge, is that an answer? Not really. First of all, the expense is crazy. The second one's not going to look right. Unless you want to climb up to Mount Everest and come back down again, it'll be brutal. So, I don't know, you know, we do a lot of things. We do a lot of traffic things. We do a lot of traffic studies over the years, so we kind of know where the hot spots are, where the trouble spots are, which is why we put the semi-permanent sign where it's at. Unfortunately, it's only semi-permanently not working right now. So, but we'll get that taken care of. We do a lot of traffic details here. The stop signs have gotten so much better than they used to be. That part is incredible. The cut-through traffic, thanks to the extra lane for Walgreens, has dissipated a lot. The only problem is telling trustee Duberstein earlier, because she was asking about the gas station here down the corner, maybe putting a pork chop in there or something to divert traffic from coming across all the lanes. That the extra lane at Walgreens has sort of created a problem where people are waving people on to come through, but they're not accounting for that third lane when they're doing it. So traffic's coming behind them and actually coming into that right turn lane. They have no idea that somebody from Walgreens is being waved out. And that is primarily, it's been a cause of a lot of really devastating accidents there. Because people try to cut across either to get in the left turn lane to go to Subway or something, or they just try to get through the straight through lane and they forget about that right turn lane. So if somebody in a straight lane is waving them on, they think it's okay to go, and you don't even look, and there's a car barreling down there, because that is a long, long turn lane.
Before I turn over to the board for any questions, I want to say one thing that has been great about our relationship over the number of years is that I have your cell phone number, yours and deputy chief, and if something's needed, I can reach one of them. And the responses, Sunday nights, during the week, have always been quick and top notch. So thank
It
you.
always will be. You know, we appreciate this relationship as much as you do. So, you know, we enjoy it here. Guys like working here. So they like B5. And not because it's slow, because it's no slower than any other beat in Grays Lake. It's really not. And traffic-wise, in some ways, with the exception of 45 and 120, it's just as bad or worse. But there's really something special about here that, you know, the residents acknowledge you. They wave to you with more than one finger. It's really kind of nice. You drive through neighborhoods and people stop you just to say hi and things like that. And community policing here is easy because people don't mind getting involved. So that, I have to say, it makes our job a lot easier. It really does.
Any questions from the board or comments? Ann?
Just one. In my work, I work with a lot of police departments in Cook County through crime-free housing ordinances and community policing. What would you and your officers like to see from residents in terms of or reporting of suspicious activity or
Right.
community policing kind of things? What would you want?
Well, it's probably been overused, but when you see something, say something. If you have a problem that is occurring now, dial 911. Non-emergency is no good for that. Leaving us an email is no good for that. And as a matter of fact, when you have things like traffic requests and things like that, speeding autos, rather than call the police department, you're actually better off using a request for service and then forward that to us. And then we have something in writing with times and everything like that in it, and it makes it a lot easier for us to follow up on those things. And we will come out. I mean, if you leave your name and you want to see somebody, an officer will come out and talk to you about the problem. If it's a long-term traffic issue that you see all the time, one of the commanders will give you a call and talk to you or come out and talk to you. We go out and look at the problems, look for problems. You know, the whole Walgreens thing that I was talking about earlier, I don't think anybody, including the state, foresaw that being an issue because there's no accounting for the human part of waving somebody on. But people try to be nice, and 120 gets backed up, and they wave somebody on, and you know, next thing you know, you have an accident. It starts way back at the Starbucks.
What's the process for request for service? Is it a phone call? Is it online?
No, request for service is online. I think you guys have it. And Grays Lake has it. You can always go on the Grays Lakes webpage, go onto their request for service, just note that you're a Hainesville resident. There's a problem here or there, and they forward it to us. So we don't monitor it, the village does, and then they just send us everything.
Now, is the Grays Lake request for service direct to the police or is it to the village?
It goes to the village,
Okay.
and then the manager's secretary actually parses them out to Public Works or wherever they go.
And there is
Maybe
a
you get
request
line
for,
share.
there is a request for service on our homepage,
Mhm.
and it comes directly to Christina,
And then,
who will distribute.
right, just forward it directly to us.
All right.
Follow-up question. The Smart 911 feature,
Mhm.
is that something you think we should have more usage of and push for in Hainesville?
Yes, I wish everyone would take the paranoia out of that whole thing. We're not tracing you and seeing where you're at all times or anything. But when you need help, it's nice to know that we know where to go.
For our audience, can you explain it?
Yeah, so you sign up for Smart 911, you have an address, your cell phone and everything, and then if you have an emergency, your phone goes off, you dial 911 or something like that, we know, we have a starting point of where you would be. Might not know where you're at, you might be in Burbank or something, hit 911 by accident, but at least we know a place where we can go and look for you. Soon, we'll have a second generation fully functioning in 911, and then we'll be able to find out where you're at by triangulation. But right now, that's not in service yet. So and we do get a lot of hang-up 911 calls. Probably, we probably get somewhere around 5 to 10 a day. A lot of butt down going on. So. But there's something with the iPhone, I think. I don't have an iPhone, but there's something with it. I know if you hit some weird sequence or something, it will automatically dial 911. And a lot of people manage to hit that sequence when it's in a purse or in a pocket or, in a motorcycle bag or wherever. So even if you dial 911, if the dispatcher calls you back, not in trouble, just answer the phone and say everything's okay. I'm here, everything's fine. That's all we need to hear. And a lot of times we'll ask, if you're in town, we're going to send an officer over just to make sure you're fine. Because sometimes we get 911 calls and there's an assailant, a domestic violence thing, something like that, where somebody doesn't feel free to talk to a dispatcher. And they'll say everything's okay, but it's really not. So we usually send an officer for follow-up if you're in our jurisdiction, or if you're not, we may send an officer from another jurisdiction to check on just to make sure everything's okay.
Georgianne?
Yes, we're having Sergeant Gore from your police department come and talk to our seniors next month
Sure are.
about scams. And maybe you kids don't see that as much as us old folks do, but they're sounding so realistic and so inviting and normal that it's so easy to get scammed by something and not even realize it until it's too late. So it's really going to be important that he's going to come and talk to us about how to deal with them, what things to look for to make sure that it's really not a real call. And I know that there are people who, some of our seniors have had problems, and they're going to bring their information and present that as well. But
Yeah.
we really appreciate that and I think he's bringing
Sure.
some of his cohorts with him.
He is, and and it does actually apply to younger people because there's new scams out on all the social media stuff that I don't have. But they contact you like they're friending you or they're another kid or whatever the scam is, and they get information from you or get pictures or something, and then they try to bribe you saying, I have all your contacts and I'm going to send this to all your contacts unless you give me some money. And that has been happening a lot. And that's not happening so much to senior citizens. That's happening to a whole younger crowd. So be careful on social media because you never really know who you're talking to unless you really know who you're talking to. And then you have to make sure that their identity hasn't been stolen on the social media, which has been happening a lot. And you guys probably don't even know what Facebook is now because it's so done. But I look at cars on Facebook. That's me. I'm 60-some years old. But yeah, like my kids all have stuff and they talk to each other and they say, "Oh, Dad, I'm gonna send you something on Instagram," and I gotta go, "What?" But I don't get on that stuff. That's why I don't get on it because I don't 100% understand it. So all I'm saying is you guys are a lot smarter than I am with electronics and things like that. And so are these people who you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know who they are or where they are, mostly not local, and mostly try to bribe them. So the thing to do is if something like that happens, as a parent of 5 children, I can say, go to your parents. Because right when you think your parents are gonna blow a gasket, they don't. They blow a gasket over dumb stuff. They don't blow a gasket over real problems. So go to your parents. Your parents will either call us or suggest you what to do or whatever. But we don't have all the answers. But I will say that if something like that happens to you online, go to your parents. And they won't call us. You can call us. It doesn't matter. We won't keep secrets, though. I'm sorry, but if you're under the age of 18, we won't keep your secret. We have to tell your parents. So just tell your parents up front. That's the way we handle it.
Just to top off Georgianne's comment, there was an article in the Daily Herald today of, I think, a 62-year-old gentleman who got scammed out of $145,000. And now with AI, the development of AI, one of the concerns is that they'll be able to replicate a person's voice that you may know. And Mom, I'm in trouble. This is your aunt. I need money. And it'll sound like that. So be careful.
Right.
Okay. Before I turn over to the audience, Doug.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Chief Douglas. So question, and I won't bother you when this issue like this guy. No. So I figured out what the issue is with when people speed down Hollow Drive and Centennials because of the townhouses.
Right.
Do you think, would it help, because I noticed as you come in, there's a speed sign, so, but thereafter there's not. Do you think it would help to have a few more, like another one in Centennial in the middle somewhere in Hollow, just so people go, oh wait, it's 25 and I'm going 40 now?
I'm not going to say it hurts. I'm just going to say that people tend to ignore them. And the more signs there are, the more they tend to ignore the signs. And you have that bend there. You're by the back of the hall here. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous because there's usually people parked on one side or the other there. So people, I think, have gotten to a point where we've been out there enough. I'm not saying that they're doing the speed limit, but certainly they're not doing the 45 and 50 miles an hour that they used to go through there because they did. And especially when there was all the construction going on out here, and that was a big cut through. It was really bad. We were writing 10, 15, 20 tickets a day for the stop sign and for the speed. So, but whenever you notice something like that, like I say, you just request for service. We'll be more than happy to come out. I have I have a Sergeant Porter who's coming out to give you your talk. He actually works in the commander's position right now, and I'm sure eventually will be promoted. When I go, there's going to be, some changes. So those changes are all part of you guys were talking about your 10-year plan and all that. It's taken me 10 years to do a plan for the police department. And every piece of that has come true except probably the top 2 or 3 positions. And I'm the guy holding that up. So that's why I decided to go. Because I want to see my plan. I want to see something happen for some people. I think it's good for everybody. It's a refreshing outlook. And I can just drive around in circles in another town. You'll never know I'm gone.
Never know. Any questions from any of the audience members? Students? Compliments? Complaints? No, George, you don't count. Go ahead, sir.
Number one, I just want to thank you for the support of the village and also some of our activities. Speaking of which, I'll probably be coming to you a week or two about the Civil War.
Yeah, you can just call Jeff, right?
Yeah.
He was our Civil War guy.
Right.
He may be the next general. I don't know.
The North Wind.
Yeah.
All right, any other? Yes, ma'am.
I have a compliment. I pick up my neighbor's newspaper every morning, and she's 95.
Mm-hmm.
So she had 3 papers.
Yeah, scared.
So I called you and said we need a wellness check. And someone came in, they found she'd actually been supported by an ambulance 2 days before. Called me back to let me know,
Right.
do the whole thing, so much
Right.
appreciated.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
And, you know, if there's one thing that I feel I've done in the last 11 years is that we have a caring group of people that work there. So we go above and beyond a lot. We do a lot of things that you don't have to do, and you know, we do them because we want to do them. We're part of this community, you know, at least 12 hours of our workday. So anywhere between a half and a third of our lives is spent here. So sometimes we spend as much time as somebody that lives here in the community. We want it to be nice for you, just like we want it to be nice for us. Our job is to try and protect you from bad things. We do that as much as we can. But, you know, crime's gone really low. People have gotten, I don't know, they have a whole different set of rules now. And it's very difficult when you try to stop people and they don't stop. You have a snap decision to make whether you chase them or don't chase them. We have a no chase policy just because it's safer. But if it's a major crime or something like that, you know, we have a decision to make. But we try to do what we can do to keep all the bad out, or at least keep it curbed enough so that you don't have to deal with it. I think we do a pretty good job of that. And, you know, we have partners. The park helps us sometimes. We help the park, probably a little bit more than they help us, but, you know, it's all good. We help the beach. They help us. So we always have help, even if we usually have 5 people working. This is one of our 5 beats. So, like I say, you almost always see a police officer around here. And we have an accounting in that you get every month too. So you know how much time we spend here. My time counts too. And I try to do here twice a day. I try to do here twice a day, every day.
I'm going to let you go then. All right, thanks, Bill. Thank you. You don't have to hang.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Did we approve that? No? No. Second? Second. Roll call.
Trustees Richmond. Aye. Schmowitz. Aye. Priest.
Aye.
Vogel. Aye. Duberstein. Aye. And Williams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
You guys are here because of the class. Did you see the agenda sitting on the back? You got a copy of that? Consent agenda is just stuff that's pretty normal. It happens all the time. It doesn't take a lot of discussion. So we group it together and we go through this vote. There's some business items later that may take a little discussion, but one of the processes for our board is that they receive a packet of information explaining the bills, explaining the discussion, or explaining the topics that we have to vote on beforehand. Last Thursday, we did it on the Thursday before the meeting, so they have a chance to review it, call in and ask questions for clarification before they come to a meeting. So you may not see on some of these items a lot of discussion, but it's not that the opportunity is not there. Okay? All right.
Believe me, we get homework.
Yeah. And you guys usually require a picture. That's a $5 charge. As soon as we wrap this up, and it won't take a whole heck of a lot longer, I'll hang around, I'll let you take a picture. Okay? All right. Reports, finance.
Okey-doke, from Kelly. Disposals of the tablets ordinance is a business item. She did supply trustee Richmond with the tablet information so she could check with the library for possible donation there. Okay. Per the auditors, we're looking in very good shape right now. The majority of the testing is completed. Besides the leases and some minor items, they have booked time next week to wrap those items up and work through the report. The mayor and Kelly had a meeting. We'll have a meeting on 9/6 with Blue Wire. They're the ones that currently support our old telephone systems to talk about switching it over to the new phone lines. And Kelly has been going through records and files in our office in preparation for when Christina performs some of the records retention products that she has packed into many boxes.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you. Public Works going?
Yeah, something that wasn't included in the packet. So what I'll do is I'll read the Public Works report from our Public Works Superintendent. Says here in August, we finished up repairs of the sinkholes that were located on Tall Oak, Holiday, and 2 other areas, Cranberry Lake Drive and Clover. The sinkholes were repaired in all those areas, and it usually takes a little while for it to get to them. They also repaired 2 sections of sidewalks on Cranberry Lake and Holiday Lane as well. 1 panel to the townhomes on Haynes Drive, and there are only 2 more pours on Deer Crossing and Hunter's Way to be completed from the list that was planned this year. Okay, and that should not be all structurally, and then that should take care of most of the structurally damaged sidewalks. We have 2 seasonals left to continue till October 27th, and we'll conclude our seasonal summer work. Watering for this year's and last year's trees and plants have been on a regular task. The trees are looking a little bit rough because of the drought. Okay, they discontinued the tree trimming and the removal of trees for now because of the fact of the bee population being very intense. So, as a matter of fact, I had 2 of them in my backyard that had to get exterminated. So they're going to put it off for a while before they continue to complete that task. The well house updates going off our list. They pressure washed both buildings, replaced bathroom fixtures, updated to all LED lights, had RH Wood install and update the heaters and the dehumidifiers within the well house units, and install the OSHA compliance safety railing and well house 1. In addition, the security system at the Public Works building was installed and it's now secured, and the whole building has all been set up with fire safety monitoring and also the same system that was installed at the village hall. And that's about it for Public Works.
One of the joys of Public Works for students is just trying to keep the things that are necessary to keep those buildings looking good, and necessary to keep it running is their job. Cutting the weeds, cutting the grass, fixing poles, repairing the sidewalks. We have a long-range plan for our sidewalks where they have been scoped out by a different company and rated by condition. And then our guys go through and repair as much as they can in any given year. And then we do it again the next year. All right, special events, Chris.
Well, this is the weekend and I'm ready for it to be over. So everything is all set. We're good to go for the party in the park on Saturday from 4 to 9. Today I had 2 unexpected. One this morning, an email that one of our savory food trucks could not make it out. And then this afternoon I got a message that another savory truck was not going to make it out. So I unbelievably was able to fill those spots. By the time I got here, I just finished up confirming it with the 1 truck. So we are good to go with everything. So hopefully I can pull this year off like I did last year. So,
You'll do it.
so we're good to go.
All right, excellent. Ann, anything from your side on special events?
Rope making is back.
Okay, very good. Georgiana Great Age Club.
Yes, as I said before, we are having Sergeant Gore come to our meeting on it's Thursday, September 6th at 10:30 at Village Hall. Everybody's welcome. You don't have to be seniors. Anybody that's around and wants to hear about scans and what to do about it is welcome to come to the village at 10:30 on Thursday, the 6th of September.
All right, Schwalko.
SWELCO is our solid waste management organization that handles all the recycling, and they give us assistance when it's time to do contracts for a new garbage contract. There was a problem with our shoe collection in the lobby here, and so we don't have a receptacle at the moment. But if somebody has shoes that they want to dispose of, they can just mention it to one of the staff and they'll put it in a bag and save it until we get a new container for them. The village does get reimbursed for all of our recycling things that they pick up from us. We have textiles, shoes, electronics, and then we have special events where there's shredding events to shred papers that people don't want to just throw in the garbage. We have compost event where people could come and collect compost for their gardens.
One quick addition, the village doesn't get money for the recycling that your folks put out at the curb. This is just things that get dropped off here.
Right. These special
Events.
These special events and special locations. There are locations out there with the bins out there for any kind of textiles. It can be sheets or clothes or anything like that. It either get, if it's in good shape, it would get donated. If it's in bad shape, it gets recycled. And the same thing with the shoes.
And that bin is right on the side of the building out here.
Yeah, that's for the textiles. And, so, that's what's happening right now. I'm going to try and get some additional events out here, but at the moment, they're not.
Wally, I want to come back to you. You want to discuss this?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, if anybody would like to see kind of a rough drawing here, what we're gonna try and do, and I'm on, Chris and I are on a HADOC committee committee that is trying to develop the open space right in front of the public works over here, that big grass area that nobody's using and everything else, and what we're thinking of is just make it kind of like a special events area. So we're talking with Tim Seiler, okay, the public works, and what we can do and how we can need to develop it. And this all started last Christmas when I went to another village and I saw their Christmas display, and I just said, oh, wait a second, how do they do that? And I just, here's extra copies if you want. So I just said, sure, maybe we should be able to develop it and everything else. And so what we have here is a layout of what we're trying to do is we're coming the electric out of the public works building, okay, going across the parking lot, putting 3 light poles in there, putting some paths, some wood chip paths, picnic tables, 3 berms, and what it gives you here is kind of the look of what we're trying to think of, maybe the berms looking like, okay, which is going to be more of perennial plants and everything else, rock formations, but nothing too tall, but just something to cover up somewhat of the parking lots and redevelop it so that we can use it either for food trucks, put Christmas decorations out there, maybe a special events, Halloween, theme or something, and get it to give back to a little bit to the community to enjoy. So that's it.
It'll be a multi-year process.
Right. It's not going to be.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Wally. Christina.
I have nothing at this time.
All right. And I have nothing that we haven't already covered. So I need a motion to pass a resolution to appoint a director for Swellco.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Trustees Richmond? Aye. Chanel? Aye. Reese?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Duberstein?
Aye.
And Williams?
Aye.
Motion carried. Resolution 23-6-172.
And need a motion to approve an ordinance amending section 17.05.05 of the Village of Hainesville Code of Ordinances governing residential fence heights.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Discussion. Roll call.
Trustees Richmond? Aye. Chanel? Aye. Reese?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Duberstein?
Aye.
And Williams?
Aye.
Motion carried. Ordinance number 23-08-347.
Need a motion for an ordinance authorizing the disposal of personal property no longer necessary or useful to the village.
So moved.
Discussion? And any idea what the library's going to be using?
I am not sure yet. Kelly gave me the information I shared with the library, and their IT guy was out of town.
Okay.
So hopefully I'll get some more information this week.
We'll hold it for you guys first, and if not, we'll seek a different source. All right? Roll call, please.
Trustees Richmond.
Aye.
Chanel.
Aye. Reese.
Aye.
Vogel.
Aye.
Duberstein.
Aye.
And Williams.
Aye.
Ordinance number 23-08-348.
Need a motion to adopt an ordinance by reference for the Lake County Watershed Development Ordinance. This is the required event for us.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Trustees Richmond.
Aye.
Chanel.
Aye. Reese.
Aye.
Vogel.
Aye.
Duberstein.
Aye.
And Williams.
Aye.
Ordinance number 23-08-349.
Need a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7:49. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'll be out for pictures.
Thank you, everyone.
$5.